Welcome to the Draftstars AFL show with Smatho and Roody.
With thanks to Daily Fantasy Rankings, your number one resource for AFL Daily Fantasy, and of course Draftstars, your home of AFL Daily Fantasy. This is the AFL show with the Draftstars AFL show with Smatho and Roody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to another show. This is round 11. It's the Swans versus the Tigers. Smatho's back and Roody's back for another great episode breaking down Friday night footy. Roody, g'day mate, how you going?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. It's been a big day today at the old schoolyard, so I'm enjoying a beverage, enjoying a frosty cold one as we do the show. But it's can be an interesting little slate tomorrow night. I'm actually kind of excited for it. It should be a good game. It should be a good slate too. You
didn't see any injured ruckman with a neck brace running around laps today?
No, not today.
No, that's a bit unfortunate. Now, of course, here we are here thanks to Draftstars. Now, Draftstars are also doing their AFL $500,000 live final, which will be available here in late August. 84 tickets have been won now here, Roody. So we are getting towards halfway through the qualifiers. But we need to give a shout out to our latest ticket winners. And here are they. This is the who's who of Draftstars royalty here. So let me get through this list. Brownlow Fife, he's done a AFL live final all the way from WA. He'll be here. Matty Lee, I had heard whispers that Matty Lee was starting to struggle a little bit, but he just went whooshka and went 2 tickets over the weekend. Speaking of whooshka, Jay Barrett, 16, also a very good Draftstars player. He's be in the live final. Barb's 12, picked up his second ticket. Eda Patton, which is a really nice little username there. He's in. Jacko Baker, he's very excited. He's trying to get his, obviously the other Baker along. Oh, Baker's pups, but Jacko Baker is in there first. And then you've got the royalty here. You've got the King, Willen 09, and then you got the Prince, Brody 4. So it's look, not having a go there, but geez, what we are week 7 into it, and this is their first tickets. Come on, boys. Come on, I'm sure this week they'll be looking to lock away their second ticket there for you.
Yeah, look, there are some stars there, but there's also one bloke who's just making up the numbers, Jay Barrett. I think he's just making up the numbers there. He may as well donate his tickets to you and me, I think, Smatho.
Guest passes. I like it. I like that idea, Roody. Now, into the Draftstars AFL Live Final. Make sure you look for the qualifiers in the lobby. This week we've had qualifiers for the golf, for the basketball, for the NRL, and obviously for the AFL as well. So check that out. Hit draftstars.com.au to make sure that you have your entries in for the live final. Now let's talk about this game, Friday night, the Swans and the Tigers. $75,000 prize pool available from Draftstars. 7,500 just under for the first prize. Live final qualifiers as well. The Buck Hunter, the Micro Midi, it's all there. We're at the SCG, Roody, for this little Friday night. A little rare glimpse into a different ground outside of Melbourne. Mate, let me bring up the teams. We've got a bit of team news for this week, especially on the Swans. Now, the Swans are no Hickey in the ruck. Is probably one of the main key ones there. Josh Kennedy did his hamstring. He's going to be out for ages. So there goes that little AK little midfield that we wanted every week. James Bell, Colin O'Riordan have been omitted. In comes James Rowbottom, Matt Roberts for his first game, and Sam Reid. Jack Graham and Marlon Picker in for Jake Arts, Kane Lambert, who just can't seem to get going, and then Tommy Lynch is a big out for the Tigers as well. So tell me about these changes here, Roody. Looks like some good fantasy relevant changes here, mate.
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with Josh Kennedy. I love Josh Kennedy. He's an amazing player. Probably has seen better days though, and I've been sucked into playing him for weeks now. So I'm sorry, Josh, nothing against you, but I'm glad that I won't get sucked into playing you again this week. But interestingly, apart from one random game where they threw him back in the midfield and he did quite well, he only had 9 CBAs or 9%. 9% CBAs last week. So that's just, there's nothing to go. Rowbottom comes back in, but the Sydney midfield is functioning so well at the moment with Parker and Mills, especially. He's just having he's having an All-Australian year, let's be honest, that I would love to, and Warner, the emergence of Chad Warner as well. I don't think Sydney expected him to come on as quickly as he has. And James Rowbottom, former Neefle Pig James Rowbottom, has kind of been relegated to a wing kind of role where it's just not it's not his bread and butter. So, you will discuss him when we get to midfield. The other changes for the Swans. So Hickey, that's a big one. The rucks for this game were looking really disgusting. But Hickey going out is a big impact, and we'll discuss that later as well. James Bell, Matt Roberts comes in, the debutant. He will eventually be a midfielder years down the track, but he'll probably play that half forward role that Bell usually plays. And then O'Riordan had an absolute stinker last week. He was on the ground for something like 80% of the game and only managed 11 fantasy points. So absolute stinker. Over to the Tigers, Tom Lynch, who was in red-hot form, goes down. Kane Lambert can't get his body right. Arts is admitted. And in comes, like for like with Lambert and Jack Graham, and then Marlon Pickett stays in as well. So, I think, there's a bit to talk about when we get to the rucks, of course, but apart from that, it's pretty much like for like. I think with O'Riordan out, Sydney might have to rejig their backline just a touch. So there's one guy in particular who I think will benefit from there, and we'll get to that soon. Interestingly, sorry, did you nearly cut you off? Sorry, Smatho. The big thing here, the big unknown, it was 2016 when the Tigers last played at the SCG. So they haven't played there, and you just can't go back that far and look for fantasy relevance. In that game, interestingly, Sydney smashed them by 110 points. Buddy kicked 7. We had 9 fantasy tons with 5 over 120 or something. The SCG does give us some big scores. It's a smaller ground, does give us some big scores. So we'll pick that up when we get through the positions, mate.
Now, I've just brought up the Daily Fantasy rankings here, and you just said if you want to go back that far. Well, you can. 2016, round 23 at the SCG. There we go. Dustin Martin had 114 and Trent Cotchin had 94. There's some names here from a blast in the past. Rance and Hunt had a 99 on whoever he is. So there's available.
Taylor Hunt, the ex-Geelong player, I believe.
Excellent. So if you are looking for player scores, it's available on dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. But tonight, obviously, myself and Roody will be referencing points against, and they're also available for free here on the site. So we'll be referencing those if you want to check them out. dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. All right, mate. Well, as I bring up the Draftstars lobby here, what's your kind of overall strategy for this match on Friday night? Because we've done a lot of Richmond Tigers over the journey, and they're not exactly a fantasy pigs kind of team. If you think of the Bulldogs, so yes, they can turn up. But when it comes to the Tigers, it's a bit of a grind for these guys.
Yeah, definitely. That's right. They have never been a fantasy-friendly team, apart from the Blue Moon performances from Tom Lynch and Dusty and those kind of guys. So, the fact they haven't played the ground for a while makes it even more of an unknown. And what's interesting, if you look at the DFR stats there, Sydney concede the fewest points. Okay, so they concede, I should clarify, fewest fantasy points in the league. And Richmond actually are the third highest conceded. Okay, so that already gives us a bit of an idea of where we want to go here. But then again, if you look at the other column on DFR, you'll see that Sydney are kind of middle of the table. They don't accrue a lot of fantasy points either. They're not an accumulating team. So it's kind of hard. Sydney is just a bad matchup everywhere you look, and almost every single line. Rucks, forwards, mids, defenders. Sydney is a bad matchup. Again, that's pushing us towards one kind of pathway here. In terms of positions, we'll get to those later. But yeah, I'm expecting Smatho quite a low-scoring affair when it comes to fantasy points. I wouldn't be surprised to see. I don't think we're going to see that many multiple. We're going to see multiple hundreds. We're not going to see a 950 single slate score. I reckon a winning score will be the mid to high 8s, if that. So just bear that in mind when you're constructing your team. You don't have to jam in those really expensive guys. I think if you get one or two guys that go off, you can build around those one or two guys. So it'll be interesting to see how people play this one.
Now, as we go through the positions here tonight, Roody, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat, comment on the Facebook or on your YouTube there, say good day. And I'd like to obviously welcome our viewers that are watching the live stream at the moment. We'll say hello to J2. He's tuned in, so nice to see you again this week. Thanks for jumping on. So let's talk about rucks in this position, because obviously Tommy Hickey is the main reason that we've only got Peter Laddams in the team. He's solo rucking up against Toby Nankervis at 13,250, and then Ivan Soldo is also available at 7,050. So first question off the top of my head, we've got Laddams here as a ruck forward. We've got Nankervis as a ruck. There seem to be in that middle price. Are we considering double ruck stack, or are we literally just trying to find a ruck here and move on?
Look, on these single slates, double rucks are quite a popular way of playing. Myself, I don't think, Nankervis does have a big ceiling. Usually it's much, much better when Soldo's not in the team. Although that said, that I think Richmond are going to have to do some interesting things. So do they go with just a forward line around Rewald? Do they do some interesting things and moving? Just going to double check before I shoot myself in the foot. Is Bolter still in the team, or is he injured? 1 second. What's happened to Noah Bolter?
No, he's not there.
Is he? He's not there. Right, he must be injured. Okay, so Soldo, does he stay more exclusively as a forward? To try and stretch the Swans back line. So, yeah, I'd be a little bit cautious about doing a double ruck tonight. I don't think we need to, it is a tough matchup for Laddams, but he's solo. And I think when there are solo rucks, the field will be very, very heavy on Laddams. And also because of his dual position, his ownership will be around the 70-75% for sure. Yeah. But that said, I don't think that's bad chalk. There's plenty of ways to differentiate around the grounds. So you can go for Laddams if you want that security and just move on, which is most likely what I'll be doing.
Okay. All right. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's move on then. All right. Defenders. This is where we can get some fantasy goodness here with the top 3 players, or let's say top 4 players here in short. Boston, Lloyd and Blakey all have great upside. They're all averaging, that high 90s. Nicky Vlodston's just struggled last week with only the 68. But these guys are serious fantasy scorers if they get their own way. As you mentioned before, though, Sydney's pretty hard to score against. So are we going to temper expectations for the top 2 here in Short and Boston?
Yeah, 100%. Spending 16,000 for Jaden Short is just a bit too rich for my blood. Even though they're if you play Rioli and the debutant, you can. So that's Morris Rioli, by the way. You can squeeze Mills and Short in. With the matchup itself, I don't think there's that much of a reason to go looking for Short. Now, he is playing more of a midfield role. Recently, over the last few weeks, he's gone 62, 50, and 43% of CBAs in those last 3 weeks. So that may make actually more of a case, because midfielders kind of do tend to score a little bit better in the SCG. But I wouldn't be very heavy on Jaden Short, and definitely wouldn't be heavy at all on Nick Vlosten. I just don't think that Sydney play in a way that allows Nick Vlosten to score well. I think that if you're playing Nick Vlosten, you're playing him against Melbourne, you're playing him against Gold Coast, teams who don't always move the ball that well inside 50. I wouldn't be very high on Vlosten myself. The interesting one here, the 2 next guys, Jake Lloyd and Nick Blakey. Blakey's been in really solid form, pumping out 390s in a row. Jake Lloyd, I mean, this is a guy who was just bankable for years, Smatho. And, we've mentioned him before on a solo show before, that he just doesn't seem to have the historic ceiling that he once did. However, that said, he does have 3 games over 100 points at the SCG this season. So I'm hoping maybe people are a little bit scared away from Jake Lloyd, considering his up and down performance recently, and that Nick Blakey actually takes more ownership than Lloyd. But, you could jam them both in as well. Looking down the board from here, Broad and Rioli don't really inspire me that much in terms of their ceilings at that price. I think you can better use the salary in other places. McInerney's been a bit of a disappointment for me this year. I thought he would really go to the next level, but he's kind of struggled for fantasy output this year. I think he's been good in real footy terms, but fantasy, he hasn't quite been the player that I thought he would be. Paddy McCartan, let's think about this. With Tom and Paddy McCartan, even Dane Rampi will be forced to play small. And then so Paddy and Tom will take Rewald and the resting ruck. So there would be a bit of an opportunity for Paddy to get off the chain a little bit. I don't mind Paddy. Tom, I don't like as much for ceiling, but floor at the value of Tom McCartan could be okay. But the guy that I really like here, Smatho, is Brayden Campbell. He scored 53 as the sub last week. He has kind of struggled again to find his place in the team. But at his price, I don't mind chucking him in a Swans pairing. Like I mentioned previously, the Swans do get a slightly better matchup in the back line. Where are the stats? I think I wrote it down, but yeah, they get a slightly better matchup in the back line, but not amazing, but something to consider. So below that, there's no one else I'm really that keen on. Dane Rampi, is he the new Josh Kennedy? Is he the one that we're gonna think about? Oh, Dane Rampi, didn't he used to be good? Let's put him in. That 6K with O'Riordan out. Maybe, I don't know. There are worse plays. There are worse plays than Rampi.
I don't see Rampi just rolling up the halfback to go to the stoppages. I think he'd be just firmly planted in the back pocket, whatever, trying to find those intercept marks. But I do like Brayden Campbell at 7-8. I'm coming back up to Jack Lloyd. 13,000. I know his price has been lower historically over the journey, but as you said, there will be a few people who were burnt last week. We did bump him up after a couple of tons and he had a 68. So if you put that away in your mind and in your back end, he's had multiple tons at the SCG. I think he's a great play at that 13K. And as I said, I can't really get up to the Tigers here. That's a bit too much for my liking.
And the other thing about Lloyd is that, if he was any cheaper, I really like the pricing. I think Draftstars have a good job on the pricing there, because if he was any cheaper, even just the psychological of, effect of being 12 instead of 13, I think his ownership would jump 5%, So the fact that he's still 13, I think is really, really good and makes him quite an attractive play for me.
Let's talk the midfielders. As you alluded to earlier, Richmond do concede, fantasy points, not a stack, all right, but Sydney just don't give it away. And we talk about how the Tigers are not really a fantasy state kind of team. So as you can see here, we've got Mills, Parker, Heaney, Chad Warner, Errol Gould, and James Rodbottom, all above 11K. I will point out Isaac Heaney's just a midfielder only this week. So I reckon his ownership will plummet, what we usually get from him. But let's start from the top there. Calum Mills at 17,240. Are you doing your best to get to him, knowing that he probably will lead the slate in fantasy scoring?
Yeah, I think there's two options for leading the slate in the fantasy scoring. There's Jaden Short ceiling game, or there's a Calum Mills ceiling game. Of those, I think the Mills ceiling game is more likely, definitely the more likely outcome. And let's be honest, he's had some massive games this year, some of the biggest fantasy scoring games of the whole league this year, actually, in that massive game against Hawthorn. And then at home against Essendon. And I know that Essendon, that game, that was so bad, that game,
Yes.
So don't expect a 150, 160, But the thing I love about Mills is this year is he's just doing it all, 7 marks a game, the stats, and the tackles as well. He gets his own footy. He gets free as well. Richmond aren't a team that traditionally tags either. So I don't think there's any danger of that. So I think there's enough value around to get Mills and have him as that headline act of your team, and there's build around Mills. Yeah, definitely.
So there's a $3,000 gap difference down to Luke Parker, however. And he's averaging 100.7 in his last 3 games. Highlight by his 123 last week. He's going to be pretty popular here.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I've been waiting for this gag for a while, Smatho, but I think Sydney Stacks will be popular, and I don't mean the Richmond defender. I got him, guys. I got him. And
that's a good one.
Yeah, Sydney Stacks will be popular. So you can easily go Mills, Parker, Warner, and even have Lloyd in your back line. It's really easily done this week. You don't even have to go all the way down to the debutants, to be honest. To the debutant and to Morris Rioli. There's enough value around the place to squeeze those guys in. So Parker, he's. I keep on waiting for him to get old and bad, but he's so underrated, and I'm glad that we get this game because Sydney, they're one of my favourite teams. Let's be honest. Like, who doesn't love Sydney? And Luke Parker, I think, is just so underrated as a player. Sometimes he can go missing a little bit, and sometimes his scores are propped up by some goal kicking performances as well. But that's really only happened once, way back in the beginning of the year. 123 was one goal, 119 no goals, and 123 2 goals. So so Luke Parker, I think, is definitely a play I'll be considering. And then Dion Prestia, the next one down. Of all I think there are 3 prime Richmond midfield options in Prestia, Martin, and Bolton. And I think that Prestia, has the highest ceiling out of all those, but can you trust his body? I mean, every second, third game he seems to go down. So buyer beware with Prestia's body. At the same price, who do we have? We have Isaac Heaney, who hasn't really started off on fire, absolute fire, and then when Buddy came back, he really suffered and hasn't really been the same fantasy player since Buddy came back. But you made a really great observation, Smatho, that his ownership be right down because of the lack of dual position. Chad Warner, I mean, let us down a little bit last week, but you can forgive him after 400s in a row at 13,000. I definitely will be making a case for him. But also, don't forget about the young buck in Errol Golden. He's a player. Like, this kid is just a player, So I really like him as a bit of a point of difference as well. Chuck him in your forward line if you want to. And then, Smatho, how do you see, question without notice,
yes,
the midfield mix, Jack Graham, right, Jack Ross, do they get stuck on the midfield? Do they get stuck on the wings, or do you reckon they see some midfield time?
Well, there's Camden. Camden's always a winger. I can't see him going away. You got a lot of wingers here. You've got Ross, Pickett, Edwards, and Graham. And then obviously Dustin's just going to roll through wherever he likes. So you can only really guarantee your Bolton and Prestia, CBAs, and then you have a combination of 4 or 5 guys possibly. So they're all awkwardly priced as well, around that 10, 11K, where you probably get Graham hitting another 85 or a 90 or even 117 there a couple of weeks ago, whereas he can just get that flat 59 or 60 points there. So interesting again. Obviously, Cochin's pretty solid without being spectacular. And then, Pickett, couple of affected scores there as well. So, it's an interesting question there, Rudy. I'm sure. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know the stats on this. I'd love to see it, but how wingers score at the SCG and whether they need it, just because it's such a small ground that really kick out of the midfield and you're inside 450, So I'd love to see. I think that I just know that it's going to be one of these guys. I wouldn't be surprised if a Ross or a Graham. Graham's probably historically got that massive ceiling that we see maybe 3 times a year. So one of these guys could easily have a big game, but it's really difficult to guess which one. So in that case, you'd probably build a couple of teams with one of them in, and then the other one in another team, just with a very similar build, and just switch those guys around. I know there's a bit of a price difference between Graham and Ross, but you could do that easily. Florence and McInerney, I think they'll both go not under-owned. They'll probably just go where they should go, Rowbottom's the one that, I just feel sorry for him, just stuck in that bad position. But he is a tackling machine when he gets set free in the midfield. But there's not much else to talk about here other than Maurice Rioli, who has, really needed those couple of goals to get his big scores of 60 and 76. But there'll be opportunities for him. Matt Roberts, a little bit about this guy. Went mid-draft around the 30s, I think. They see him as in the long term as a midfielder, but I think as many young midfielders do, he will get stuck on the half-forward line this week. Sydney are pretty tight on their midfield rotations. I mean, if Josh Kennedy can't get a crack in, I don't really see them. Maybe if Sydney get out to a lead, maybe they give him a shot, but I think he'll be stuck in the forward line this week. Roberts, which definitely reduces his ceiling.
I just want to quickly show you a stat here from DFR about the forwards here as we're about to go into them. Our temporary expectations. Look at here. What's that? 14th, 15th, 16th here for points against for forwards here. So this is where you could possibly look to save some salary here for this particular one. Obviously, Maurice Rioli's name at 6K is going to be pretty popular, but as I said, he needs goals. And if he can get goals, then that's fantastic. So let me start at the bottom then. We'll work our way up here. So Rioli, Wicks and McDonald, they're both here at 7,200 and 7,320. Can either of these two bob up?
Yeah, I really like Sam Wicks, and Logan McDonald had an awesome game last week. Interestingly, it was against Carlton, who, good old Jacob Wittering had a great game, but Logan McDonald did get off the chain as well. Look, you could definitely make a case. If you want to choose one of them, you'd probably go for McDonald and hope that he kicks a bit of a bag. With Sam Reid coming back into the team, Richmond, let's see who they've got as tall defenders. They've got Tarrant, Jibkis, and Grimes. So it's possible that, they do try and that one of these Sydney forwards pops up. So Logan McDonald isn't a terrible option. Moving up the food chain here, Shane Edwards did have a really good game last week, but it was against Essendon. And then if we go back to his next good game, it was against Adelaide. So, he's doing well in games where there isn't much pressure on. So I'm not, that keen on Edwards. Castagna, now that he's 9K, when he was around the 7-8, yeah, he was a good play, but 9, not so interested. Haywood, not so interested either. Sam Reid, you're going to get your 50 or your 60. He will play as the second ruck as well. I think that's one of the main reasons why he's been brought in to play that second ruck role. But yeah, temper expectations with the ceiling there. Rewald as the number one man. Sydney's backline is very, very good. And so Jack will have to kick a bag to do well to get value. And then we're up to the kind of Liam Baker, I think, will be a very popular choice this week. He's gone back to, they experimented with him a little bit in the first part of the season. Now they've just gone, hey, mate, you go back to what you do best. You go back to the half-back flank. Shorts come into the midfield, so it makes sense that Baker goes back. And so, a sum of Shorts' ceiling as a defender has just been given straight to Baker. So I think Baker will wouldn't surprise me if he's one of the highest owned forwards, to be honest. Baker Boy will be in there. Buddy, not so keen on Buddy tonight, just with the quality of Richmond's defenders. Papley, again, goal dependent. And then we've got, Dusty, Golden, Graham, who we discussed already.
All right, Rude, that's pretty much player by player for Friday night slate here from the Swans and the Tigers. Mate, I want your side, please.
My side? I thought you were doing it tonight, Smatho. I thought it was your turn.
All right, okay. I'll have a crack. Okay. All right, so this is my team of the week. Obviously, no changes this week when I did the side earlier today, so it's pretty awesome. I'm going to go cheap and go Soldo. I think I can take the other 2 on and save some salary there. If I can get my 50 or 60, fantastic. If Dan Curvis breaks a leg, that even better. That's awesome. If we don't want to wish upon him. So as for defenders, look, I do like your player Brayden Campbell at 7,830. I think that's a great price. I'm going to put in Blakey for now. Hopefully I have enough cash for Lloyd, but no good. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks for the shout. Yep. I'm just clicking to move on. As for my midfielders, let's have a look here. Let me do my forward line first. I want to get Will Morris in there. Hopefully he can get onto a couple of goals in the pocket. Seems to be a bit of a risky play knowing that I've got Wicks and McDonald there at 6'3". I love Liam Baker at 10,210. Obviously now back in defence, but only forward only. That's almost an easy decision there.
All right, so you got 14K. You've got 14K per midfielder now. So where are you going to go? Are you going to go with Mills?
I'm going to put Mills in, yes, and I'm also going to go Parker. That's pretty much non-negotiable. I could either go here to Chad Warner here at 13,000, which leaves me enough for Shea Bolton. So there you go. That leaves me $390, and I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously, I can't get up to Jake Lloyd, which I kind of want to. That means I might have to sacrifice Chad Warner to Errol Goulden. So that might cost me a second entry if I was allowed to play there already. So what do you think, mate? Does that seem to be a decent side for this week?
There are many similarities in the team that I was going to go for. Many similarities there. I was going to try and get Lloyd in. My team was basically get Lloyd in. Don't like Bolton that much. I was going to get up to Warner, and I was going to then give who was it? No, I wasn't going to go for it. Anyway, you've got a good team. Many similarities. I think I sacrificed Parker because one of the ones I sacrificed, but we'll see how we go. Now, it's a good looking team there, mate. I think it might be a popular way to play, but I like what you've done.
Yeah, look, I like the premise of trying to get Cindy Stacks in, but obviously you need that kind of cheaper Tigers, which they are available there to, obviously to give you the value there. But I think, Mills, Parker, Chad Warner is kind of almost the non-negotiables this week, and pray that Soldo goes pretty well. All right, ready? Well, that wraps up the next edition of the show. Make sure you get the Draftstars for the $75,000 contest and for the $500,000 AFL Live qualifier. Make sure you're into those. 18+ gamble responsibly at all times. Now, Roody and I will be back for round 12, which will be our last Thursday night into Friday slate before we go into the buys, which means that we will get to talk more AFL on a Wednesday night. So we're looking forward to that. Roody, thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, mate. Always a pleasure, and good luck to everyone out there.
Good luck to everyone. Hit us up on the socials, give us a like on the way out, and we'll catch you next time on the Draftstars AFL show. See you later.